Proposition 8 regulates amount outpatient kidney dialysis clinics charge for dialysis treatment. Initiative statute. Plain language, allow the government to cap dialysis clinic profits. Let's visit the legislative analyst, shall we? The following information is skippable. If you desire to get to the point, you may skip ahead until the marker in the lower corner of the screen disappears. Kidney failure. Healthy kidneys filter a person's blood to remove waste and extra fluid. Kidney disease refers to when a person's kidneys do not function properly. Over time, a person may develop kidney failure, also known as end-stage renal disease. This means that the kidneys no longer function well enough for the person to survive without a kidney transplant or ongoing treatment referred to as dialysis. Dialysis artificially mimics what healthy kidneys do. Most people on dialysis undergo hemodialysis, a form of dialysis in which blood is removed from the body, filtered through a machine to remove waste and extra fluid, and then returned to the body. A hemodialysis treatment lasts about 4 hours and typically occurs 3 times a week. Most dialysis patients receive treatment in clinics. Individuals with kidney failure may receive dialysis treatments at hospitals or in their own homes, but most receive treatment at chronic dialysis clinics or CDCs. As of May 2018, 588 licensed CDCs in California provided treatment to roughly 80,000 patients each month. Each CDC operates an average of 22 dialysis stations, with each station providing treatment to one patient at a time. The California Department of Public Health, the CDPH, is responsible for licensing and inspecting CDCs. Various entities own and operate CDCs. As shown in Figure 1, 2 private for-profit entities operate and have at least partial ownership of the majority of CDCs in California. Payment for dialysis treatments. Payment for dialysis treatment comes from a few main sources. We estimate that CDCs, again that's chronic dialysis clinics, have total revenues of roughly $3 billion annually from their operations in California. These revenues consist of payments for dialysis treatments from a few main payers. Medicare, for people 65 and older, Medi-Cal for low-income Californians, and group or individual health insurances that Californians receive through work or pay for themselves. Group or individual insurers typically pay many times more for chronic dialysis clinic treatment than Medicare and Medi-Cal, which are government programs. Long story short, people who need dialysis typically have it covered by insurance. Due to current law, government insurance providers, like Medicare and Medi-Cal, pay low rates that are near the actual cost of the service provided, but private companies, who don't have the benefit of regulation, pay a lot more. All right, let's celebrate kidneys! To get in the mood for this proposition, I invite you to take a moment to urinate as I share this special message with you. The Daryl Johnson Show is an independent enterprise and is dependent upon your support. If you've been enjoying this experience, please visit my PayPal or Patreon pages and spray a little money in there. Your help is much appreciated and goes a long way to help preventing doofuses in the voting booth. If you are still urinating, please conclude at this time so that we can proceed to the next portion of our scheduled programming. Thank you. What does it do? Prop 8 would establish a revenue cap, a maximum amount of profit the dialysis clinics could make. All the revenue beyond that cap would have to be refunded to the group and individual insurance companies with interest, but not government insurers who already pay lower rates. They would also have to pay a 5% penalty on the revenue above that specified cap. The money would be refunded proportionally. The more a company paid, the greater share of the refund they'd receive. The revenue cap would be equal to 115% of the clinic's cost. For people who own more than one chronic dialysis clinic, they would have to calculate the 115% cap across all their companies and pay their rebates and penalties accordingly. Then there's a preemptive allowance. Both the California Constitution and the U.S. Constitution prohibit the government from taking private property, which includes the value of a business, without fair legal proceedings or fair compensation. A chronic dialysis clinic owner might try to prove in court that, in their particular situation, the required rebates would amount to taking the value of the business and therefore violate the state or federal constitution. If a chronic dialysis owner is able to prove this, the measure outlines a process where the court would reduce the required rebates by just enough to no longer violate the Constitution. The measure places on the chronic dialysis clinic owner the burden of identifying the largest amount of rebates that would be legal. The measure specifies that any adjustment in the rebate amount would apply for only 1 year. Prop 8 also contains a series of reporting requirements where the chronic dialysis clinics must submit information to the California Department of Health about how many treatments they administered, how much money they made, how much they paid in rebates, etc. It also makes it illegal for a chronic dialysis clinic to not provide treatment to a person based on who was paying for the treatment. Finally, this proposition tasks the California Department of Health with developing and issuing the regulations to implement this proposition within 180 days of the measure's effective date. Fiscal impact. This is a complex and detailed proposition. I'm excluding a number of specific details for the sake of time. These details are not critical to understanding the gist of the proposition, but if this measure is of particular interest to you, I encourage you to read the entire entry provided in the General Election Guide, particularly if you happen to own a chronic dialysis clinic or want to know the specifics. The fiscal impact of Prop 8 is very uncertain. The one thing that is known is that this measure will significantly decrease the profitability of chronic dialysis clinics. Some may even become unprofitable. It would also affect local government finances in turn, presumably because of the decreased taxable incomes of clinic owners. Furthermore, much of this hinges on what costs end up becoming deductible for these clinics. Depending on how many costs the owners are allowed to deduct, the clinic's finances may have significantly different outcomes under this proposition. Also, chronic dialysis clinics can be expected to adjust their costs and the way they operate their businesses to minimize the amounts they'd have to pay out in rebates. Some clinics may even scale down their businesses or close down if they cannot find a way to stay profitable. If chronic dialysis clinics were to pay rebates based on current circumstances, they would most likely pay out several $100 million in rebates. But again, this is contingent on how owners respond to the new requirements in their businesses. The responsive owners could end up costing state and local governments more or costing them less. It could raise Medi-Cal costs or it could lower them. It may or may not result in reduced state tax revenue. It's really all based on what deductions become allowable for the clinics and how they restructure their businesses accordingly. The legislative analyst bloviates extensively on a series of hypotheticals, but this is what it comes down to. Nobody really knows what will happen until it happens. The legislative analyst also notes that there will be additional costs to the California Department of Health in the low millions to administer this measure. From Yes on Prop 8. Vote yes on Proposition 8, the Fair Pricing for Dialysis Act. Dialysis is a life-saving treatment for patients with kidney failure in which their blood is taken out, cleaned, and then put back in their body. Dialysis patients should have a clean, sterile environment during their treatments, but big corporate dialysis providers, which make billions by charging these critical ill patients as much as $150,000 a year, won't invest in enough basic sanitation. Bloodstains, cockroaches, and dirty bathrooms have all been reported at dialysis clinics, and patients' lives have been put at risk from exposure to dangerous infections and diseases. These high prices drive up healthcare costs for all Californians. Prop 8 will require the corporations to refund excessive profits that aren't spent on improving dialysis patient care. Stop overcharging patients! California's largest dialysis company marks up its charges for some patients as much as 350% above the actual cost of providing care, or as much as $150,000 per year. Prop 8 will provide strong incentives for dialysis companies to lower costs and improve the quality of their care, making patients the priority everywhere, which is especially important in low-income and minority communities. Lower healthcare costs for everyone. Because dialysis patients are often charged such huge sums for their life-saving treatment, insurance companies are forced to pass those costs on to policyholders, driving up healthcare costs for all Californians. One insurance provider, Blue Shield of California, reported that it takes 3,800 other policyholders to offset the cost of one dialysis patient. Prop 8 will help lower the cost of healthcare for all Californians. These organizations support Prop 8. Make patients the highest priority. We should vote yes on Prop 8 and tell dialysis companies to prioritize life-saving treatment for patients over corporate profits. Vote yes on Proposition 8. From No on Prop 8. Prop 8 severely limits what insurance companies are required to pay for dialysis care. These arbitrary limits will not cover the actual cost of providing care. In fact, an independent analysis conducted by California's former legislative analyst concluded that Prop 8 will result in 83% of dialysis clinics operating at a loss. This will force hundreds of clinics to reduce their operations or close, endangering patients. Missing even one appointment can be fatal for dialysis patients. Without access to community clinics, patients will have to travel long distances, miss treatments, or end up in the emergency room. Prop 8 jeopardizes the lives of 66,000 dialysis patients in California who need frequent dialysis treatments to stay alive and disproportionately hurts disadvantaged communities with higher risks of kidney failure. These people hate Prop 8. Prop 8 will increase costs for all Californians by nearly $300 million annually, according to the former legislative analyst. California dialysis clinics are highly regulated by federal and state regulators that provide quality reports on every facility. According to the Federal Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, California clinics outperform other states in clinical quality and patient satisfaction. This measure makes no sense when California dialysis care is highly regulated and saving lives. Prop 8 comes between doctors and patients. Vote no on Prop 8 and leave complicated medical decisions about dialysis in the hands of doctors and patients. And coming in for the cringiest and most uncomfortable to think about proposition, we have a winner in Prop 8. Congrats. I know this is important, but I just do not like medical discussions. Well, I don't know what to make of this. So I understand the point is, in theory, to make healthcare affordable for Californians. I do suspect, however, that this is about lowering government costs for healthcare because many government employers outsource healthcare to private insurance companies. The problem I'm having is that nobody knows how this will play out. Will it make the clinics unprofitable and drive them out of business? Will it simply lower costs and make everyone happy except the clinic owners? One thing I'm highly skeptical about is the yes side's claim that once you lower their profits, then they'll suddenly start providing better service and cleaner facilities. That obviously sounds ridiculous. The rub for me is this. There are private businesses operating, and then the government comes and says, you're making too much money, so from now on, you can't make that much anymore. And you haters can save the time. I know your point that this is healthcare and people have a right to what they need at a price they want to pay. And I don't think that healthcare access is just as simple as decreasing healthcare profits. People get into business to make money. When it's not profitable anymore, they leave. Imagine this. The government makes a law to lower healthcare costs so that doctors could only make $60,000 a year. Do you think that would affect the availability of doctors in America? America is on the forefront of medical innovation. What if there's a law that pharmaceutical companies could only repay investors 3 to 5% on investments? Would that affect healthcare innovation in America? Would we have half of the medicines and treatment aids that we have now if things like this were going on? Now, I know these are very extreme examples, but we have to accept that somewhere there is a line, and on one side of that line is affordable quality healthcare for Californians, and on the other side is a crisis of shortages. Armchair economists like to pretend that they know exactly the correct and ethical number that healthcare providers should be able to make, but I am sure it's never that easy. If you vote yes on this proposition, I think it's an understandable vote. I even think the outcomes it promises could be possible, but I'm skeptical. Skeptical about the motives of the writers of Prop 8, skeptical about the promises they make, and skeptical about the constitutionality of this sort of regulation. If you vote yes on Prop 8, you are voting to place limits on dialysis clinic profits. If you vote no on Prop 8, you are voting to leave things as they are. The Daryl Johnson Show says no on Prop 8.